We have the meeting agenda as posted. I'd like a motion to accept.
Motion.
Second? Second, okay, majority vote. Also the meeting minutes of March 13th, 2024. I'd like a motion to approve.
Motion.
Majority vote. Okay, there are a number of topics on our agenda tonight, and before that, I'd like to just disseminate some information that was given to us. There was a request on definition of a town officer. I have the legal ruling on that. Went to town council with the cooperation of the town manager and got this response. Read it. A public officer is defined as a person whose duties are public in nature, who has entrusted to him, I should say, or her, some portion of the sovereign authority of the state, whose duties are not merely clerical, but involve the exercise of power and authority bestowed by law, who holds a position established by law. Public employment, in contrast, is a position that does not include within the scope of official responsibilities thereof some portion of sovereign authority of the state, but it's a position for which the holder receives wages, salary. The reason we're asking that is in the language within the Town Manager Act, there are often references to town offices, and we need to be well defined on what that really means. So when we do the final review and votes to it, it's consistent.
Can we make a list?
What?
Of who the town officers would be,
We could do that, sure.
rather than just this definition of it? Well,
Oh.
I understand.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, incorporate it within.
Who are they?
That would be a lengthy list.
Essentially, you're gonna be talking about most of the specific department heads. So you're talking about town manager, police chief, fire chief, building commissioners, assessor, treasurer, town clerk. Those that have some sort of basis in Mass General law for their position and authority and responsibility. I'd be concerned about missing it on that list.
DPW?
DPW director, there's, library director would also be one of them.
Fire chief.
Yep, fire chief. And it becomes a question as far as there are, other officers like the veterans agent that then I believe that's also established by statute and responsibilities. Board of Health. Board of Health agent, no, Board of Health agent. So it may be almost easier to have a list of physicians and then a yes and then no column. And then we can just sort of check them off because we may need to verify exactly which ones. And that's assuming we don't make changes to create.
I'd ask in the interest of time, we'll work on this for the future time.
Okay.
Rather than delay this meeting.
Yep.
Keep the process. There are people here that would like to be recognized. I also passed out a comment from a citizen. It's the only one we received from a citizen relative to her inputs on this. So I want to share that with the committee as well. And we asked Mr. DeZutta to get some information relative to the library role, which is here. Basically defines, and I'll read it. The library role information trustee boards make general operating and administrative policies, set budget, hire, fire, review, library director supervise the internal management, daily operations and procedures of the library. And that's pretty concise, but we asked him to do that and he's responded. So that's for the committee's input as well. Okay, so before we get into, we've covered that. Okay, there is a response, Mr. Porter, you sent a request. I responded to you, but I didn't have time to copy it. So if you're okay, I'll read the response I've sent to you.
Sure.
It's Right, this was stated yesterday, as a matter of fact. Hi, Rick, we are meeting Wednesday night, and it's a good idea you're being there to get answers to your questions. I can answer a few of your inquiries prior to the meeting. These are thoughts of the committees, not necessarily mine. The town manager will be working with elected boards as daily management of the employees. He would not have any authority over salaries, promotion, vacation, scheduling of activities, or maintenance of any site. All issues relative to HR would lie within the town's personnel bylaws with the HR director and elected board. Only the elected board would have control over scheduling of any beach programs. The intent would be for the town manager to work with the board to ensure workday activities fall in line with citizens' expectations. For example, if an employee is taking unauthorized days off, and this has happened with town employees, the town manager is present and during the day and would address this issue. In all circumstances, the elected board would be notified. Any language would state in conjunction with the elected board. The intent is to have all town employees accountable to the same standards. This is not meant to be specific to any present board, but as you know, election cycles change the town offices, and we need to think of the future. Hope this clarifies some of your questions. Please feel free to reach out to me. And that was the response I gave Rick. So,
Yeah, and the reality is, it was more asking for the clarification of what final authority kind of meant, right? Because that was highlighted in the original message that you had sent out to us. And we were really just looking for what does that mean in the overall grand scheme of it? Because didn't know exactly how to provide feedback without knowing what that statement meant, right?
well,
Um,
what I'd like to do tonight is allow the town manager to speak, because I asked him to come, because the questions are going to be posed to him as to how he would
Yep.
work in such an environment. And then after that, I will recognize anybody that wants to address those issues.
Okay.
As you, therefore, he spoke already, so he'll answer some of the questions before we get to them. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. So just I want to also sort of just back up from a second. So I'm not only viewing this from the role of a town manager, I'm also viewing this as a former town planner who had to be in the exact same spot of reporting to an elected planning board and reporting to a town administrator in a couple towns to identify sort of like how things work and also how I sort of view it. In prior roles, as a town planner, the elected planning board basically provided a policy direction, and the administrative side, sort of the daytime operation, was under the town administrator. And the two had to work together because during the day, the planning board, because they had their own jobs, didn't know how I interacted with staff, didn't know how I interacted with the public, wasn't communicated on a daily basis, but likewise, the town administrator didn't know, was I responsive to the planning board's needs? How did I guide people through the process? How did I interact with public discourse? So my evaluations were from both, basically were brought together because that's the only way you could really paint a full picture for the role that I had.
Sure.
So I know what it's like to be caught in the middle. That's very much influenced sort of my career and sort of approach. Here in Upton, we have excellent staff. We have excellent staff that oversee their staff and their departments and their budgets and their operations in their response to the public, and provide excellent customer service. I try to make sure that the department heads and the staff have the resources that they need.
Sure.
Because there's so much more that's going on a town level side. Not only do I not need to get into the details, I don't really have the time either.
Sure.
So the main thing ends up being trying to coordinate activities, knowing from talking with DPW and then hearing about things, say, use an example with Marine and Recreation, making sure, okay, we have some things that are aligning, let's make sure we get together. The most immediate sort of example is really on the land use permitting where working with the planning board, they had hired or Denise provided that clerical role. She was hired by the planning board. And when she became town clerk and we went to fill that, I talked with them at length as far as, look, let's try to leverage a part-time clerical position with other needs in the department. And worked with them before implementing anything to make sure that we could have a full-time employee that supported many needs and make sure that that continues to be in touch and communication with the planning board to make sure there's not issues. And the planning board basically had said, if it doesn't work, Joe, town meeting, we're just gonna request money for that position. It's like, well, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine, but that's their ability. So sort of thinking about, specifically, let's just say recreation as an example. There's an opportunity to be a resource. There's an opportunity to be a mentor. Some of the things as far as, well, who approves vacation? I'm of the opinion, this is the same thing with department heads. They know their schedule. They know their demands.
Yep.
If Dennis isn't taking a vacation like in the middle of January when we most likely could have a nor'easter coming through.
Sure.
I trust in the department heads to manage their schedule,
Yep.
just to communicate, which I think is probably the same expectation for
We're doing it.
the rec. So I don't see where there's one taking preference, or priority over the other as far as, well, the final no is really with this person versus this person. It's a partnership because you're, as the elected board members, you see this vision for recreation and commit in the community. You are
Yep.
interacting, you're meeting the needs. And I'm trying to make sure that services are coordinated.
Sure.
And when things are going good, it's basically just touching base, but occasionally there are times where, and unfortunately they're very often HR related, where there needs to be more just
I get it.
decisive action taken.
Yep.
And that's where it's still communicating, working together, because board needs to be aware, but there's the possibility for through the town manager's office, HR, to take steps to take action that we may need to do because we may need to call a meeting with RecCom.
Of course.
So I view it as really just reinforcing communication through various departments. And being that resource for staff, because there's so much this town does.
Mhm.
No one can know it all.
Sure.
And it really depends on the department heads to know how they operate, and also, looking for direction from the RecCom itself, as well as any of the elected boards, on what they need for resources. So that's sort of how I always viewed
Yeah.
that.
Okay. And,
So.
and I also understand you're here when, me as the chair, right? I've got a paying job outside of this, so I'm not in here and I'm not seeing the day-to-day things. So that side of it actually does make sense to me, right? And it's not that I'm, against it. It's just, just trying to figure out, okay, where do things flow and how do things, adjust over time.
And that's one of the things is, quite honestly, I don't really see where there would be a noticeable change, because we have a really good working relationship now. We're always talking and, trying
Agreed.
to lay things out.
Agreed?
So there's not like all of a sudden, now it's Monday and all of a sudden, the furniture's changed in the office.
Yeah.
It's really just on that collaboration, communication, and making sure that we can coordinate across the town resources.
Rick, do you have any further questions?
No, I mean, in that sense, that side of it makes a lot of sense to me, right? And whether or not that even comes to an opportunity where there's some cross training or something else where there's other resources that we can pull from if we're in the middle of a bigger project, need an extra hand, you could, brace, or somebody provide an extra couple of hours a week to get us over the knot hole of something else, something along those lines, right? It just, I guess that side of it makes a lot of sense where we can work better together.
Can I ask, is anyone else like to? Would you like that?
I mean,
Please come up, sit up.
no, it's all right, I'll
You're
sit back
comfortable
here,
there? All
yeah.
right. Whatever
Thank you.
works.
I mean, I'm representing recreation here at this point.
Okay.
But it seems to me everything that Joe's described, he's already doing with Maria.
Right.
So I'm not sure why anything needs to change. He's a mentor to her, he guides her. He oversees a lot of the day-to-day already with her. Nothing that he described is new or something he's not really doing now. So I'm not sure why a change is required. That would be my comment.
I'll answer that, and it's just my opinion, not the committee's. We have to think of not just today, tomorrow, and that results in changes of personnel. We could have a new town manager, we could have new RecCom, we could have new RecCom director. So we're thinking, we want to stabilize some definition for the future. It's not necessarily just today, it's where are we going to be? And I would use this example, and I've said it, and not everybody agreed, but I was one of the ones that sponsored the Town Manager Act, and I was on the board, and there were 3 members trying to run a town that was ridiculous. And people say to me, well, but I'd say to people, I surrendered the authority of the chief of police, the fire chief, DP, all reporting to me. I gave that up because I knew it was impossible to do. And I think it's obviously as the town grows, it's going to become more and more significant. The town of Upton in 15 years grew about 2,000 people, and in the last 10 years, we've doubled that number. We're growing at a much faster rate, and the more units and housing that goes up, town's going to grow. We're an attractive community now in the Metro West corridor. So that's where I'm at. If anybody would like to comment today.
No, I agree. This process we developed today will be in place for 5 years. It can't be changed for 5 years. And it's mostly personalities when we get down to it, but in 5 years, none of us could be here, and we could have a town manager that wasn't so agreeable, or we could get a RecCom person that wasn't under the direct supervision. So that I'd like to ask the town manager, what are the mechanics here? Because I think that's the question. When would you step in? Would you do an accountability weekly? I mean, how? I know you got department heads now, but how would that work physically?
So I think, one of the first things would be, as it relates to setting goals for annual evaluation. That's probably one of the easiest examples. I understand that the RecCom, is going to be or has in the past and even for last year, set goals for the department staff. And many of those, I don't know what those are. So I haven't seen the results of the goal setting. But let's say we were to work sort of together on those. And let's say as part of the goal setting, it's really all outward, like making sure that we publicize and increase revenue. Say it's all programmatic. I try to, and maybe it's all rec. Maybe there's something where the select board wants to have some sort of communication or goals that then I can work in with the RecCom to make sure that that's included. And also make sure that if there's, for all the employees, I always ask them to identify personal and professional goals to work on as well through the year, because employees need to be able to take advantage of training and educational things. And, we want them to also grow in their positions, in their careers. So working together, we're able to reinforce and make sure that we're, as part of goal setting, we're looking at the whole town. Rather, you could be all doing that as part of RecCom anyways. I just don't know because there's no input from the town manager's office on that. So that's sort of
Yeah.
like just
Yeah,
a minor example.
sure.
Some of the other examples really come out, like if there was a specific emergency that was happening that needed to really bring resources together. Yes, it could be HR related, but it could be operational. It could be some challenges that need to step in, and it may be a situation where even the Recreation Commission needs assistance as well. I know in prior positions, like I had to step in as a COA director in my last town when I was assistant town administrator because someone had left and we needed a transition. Here, we don't have such a large bench that we can sort of do things, have people sort of float in to fill things, and we have to bring people in from the outside. But that's where, rather than saying, I'm sorry, Rick, good luck trying to figure that out.
right.
We're able to work cooperatively to address things, because during the day, you may not be able to take the time, or other members of the RecCom might not be able to. So by default, you may be asking, but this would create more of a structured mechanism to allow for that to happen.
Yep.
And probably pickleball is probably a good example. There.
For a meeting or not, no.
Are you telling me pickleball's become political?
Yeah, but it's
Has it not?
it's about supporting for resources and to make sure that when there are challenges that able to assist. And you are right, like right now, we all in town have a really great working relationship that I'm more than willing to step in where there's assistance needed or provide guidance. In the future, can things change? Absolutely. I've seen examples of that, and I think the town in the past has as well, where maybe action was delayed because there wasn't the ability to take more immediate action. It's always when there's serious problems that it becomes evident.
Yep.
Because the average day-to-day interactions are not really changing, that it is more cooperative and that it is something that is more about communication. When you look at the Town Managers Act and it talks about how town manager really is coordinating activities, it excludes elected boards like recreation. So that's outside of the realm. Doesn't mean it won't happen and doesn't need to happen. It's just, it requires more communication between my office and the commission versus maybe building it in where that relationship is more established, like it is with the assessors. The Board of Assessors, they oversee all of the valuations, all those processes. But when there's an angry resident down here yelling at the assessor, the Board of Assessor members aren't getting the phone call. I'm getting the phone call, and I can come down and intervene, redirect, and address to really save and really to protect the employees and to try to diffuse the situation, because that is one way to really escalate the stress level of the town hall. To all of a sudden here, you had irate people yelling, and I'm only one floor up and more than willing to come down.
If I may, and I need to interject this issue was derived from our committee. It was not derived from the town manager.
Sure.
We went to the town manager and the Board of Selectmen and said, give us your feedback. He graciously said, I have no problem with it. If that's good for the town, I'll do it. But and I'm saying it because it almost sounds like you're promoting it, and you didn't start it, we did. It came out of this committee. So that was the general consensus.
I think it may be beneficial to get a duties and responsibilities of each group. So the town manager, what his duties respond. And then I think it's going to reflect to all the other boards, because then those questions are going to come up and they'll come up at town meeting. If we can delineate who's responsible for what, I think that would solve a lot of heartburn for people.
Deb Jugends.
Just a couple of follow-ups. Who would do the performance review for director or any other director? Would you do the performance review?
Well, I would think, yeah.
In concert, so.
Everything's in
Yeah.
cooperation. All the language that we've put in so far says in conjunction with. It does not give the town manager autonomy. It needs to be in conjunction with.
Okay,
There are many things the town manager will be totally excluded from, and that will be developing your own budget. You will be hiring personnel through the town personnel bylaws, not through the town manager. You will be the ones that will determine the activities and the programs, not unlike other elected boards and committees would do. It's the only intent for us, and I think Joe's made it very clear, the only intent for us is to build a communication that will fill any gaps that may occur, and they have in the past, and I'm not gonna get into cases, but there are instances where, like you mentioned, an employee comes in here, or you have a complaint, and she's down at the park one day, and there's an irate citizen, well, who does she go to? So he's got the ability to send the police down there, go down there and deal with the issue. That's how we're looking. We certainly are not trying to strip an elected board of authority. We're trying to develop a cooperation with the elected. That's the whole purpose. Okay,
yeah, we answered the budget question, which was gonna be my next question.
Yeah.
Now, what about site improvement projects? So we are,
elected
gonna-
board,
but who's gonna pick the vendor to do the project?
the
I mean,
elected board,
the board will do that.
the town manager doesn't have any.
As chief procurement, I have to sign.
Well, you have to sign it, yeah.
Right, but,
You would,
right,
if
We
you
just
said,
bring the contract to you or
Correct.
in this case.
right,
Yeah.
right.
yes, you were gonna say something, Dick, I'm sorry.
No, it just has to go through procurement. I
Yeah.
think before, once it gets developed.
Oh, sure.
Procurement, it would be,
Yeah.
before you went too far, that it would be okay.
Yeah.
But,
Right,
But the key word is you are the innovators.
Right.
So you would innovate a program and develop it,
Yeah.
and then it has to go through the normal town process, i.e. town meeting,
Sure.
procurement. Yeah,
coverage for when Maria's out?
I would think, it's just me again, you would work with town manager and say she's gonna be out. He calls you and says, look, she's out. I've got somebody I can bring over there in the temporary to fill the slot for a day, 2 days.
Yeah, and that's where, my understanding is there have been times where, recreation commission members have been on site and maybe worked a concert or something like that.
Mhm.
That may or may not change, but in a couple of years, you may have members that can't and don't want to.
Sure.
So that's where, able to identify and make sure that in advance, we have resources and identify how to handle
Okay.
those things. Because it doesn't need to be a vacation. Life gets in the way sometimes.
Understood.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, there could be other life events that come into play.
Yeah.
Understood. Right, and I think that's just, I think part of where we were just trying to make sure we understood.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, like, for office coverage, we'll bring in senior tax workers. That may not be an option down at the beach, but identifying in advance what the supports are.
Yep.
And if that ends up being a Redcon member, then it is. But at some point, that may need to change.
Sure.
And that's where really
Oh,
just
yeah.
the coordination, the support. If we have to do something, we bring in people then
Sure,
able to work on that.
sure.
I think the assessor's plan has worked well, and you could probably follow
Mhm.
that line. It's a little bit different because they're right here, but I think that's, you talk about employee evaluations, well, you developed the evaluation, but he would review it to make sure that it was standard for the town and what needed to be in there and goals and objectives and stuff. So I think that's a benefit to the employees, I believe, that they would, they would get recognized and et cetera.
Sure. Sure.
And so does this mean that Jill will be more aware, not that you're not, now, I don't want to ask you, but I'm about to. Sorry. No, I mean, in this case, would Jill become more aware than normal of what's going on in recreation. In other words, reading
Yes.
minutes, attending meetings, or like, how would you become more knowledgeable? Meetings with the rec director? I mean, how do you get that knowledge of what the committee's working on?
So I think, because we do talk quite a bit, and because we also have monthly department head meetings, I have a good idea of what is going on. Marie does a great job publicizing what they're working on and requesting collaboration and support from other departments. So it may be that there are needs where both Recreation Commission said and Maria said, why don't we bring in Joe? Because there's a larger need for collaboration on this part of it. I don't think, and that's where I don't really think that there would be a significant change if this was to happen, because we already have that communication in place.
Right.
And with the committee, I had basically, they had said, well, if this got approved or was not approved, would that be a challenge for you? And I'm like, told them, no, because we already have that communication and collaboration.
Right.
And when things are rolling smoothly, you know, there's no
Sure.
friction, and it's always when all of a sudden there's challenges that then,
No doubt.
you know, the need.
And honestly, I think part of it is maybe it just caught us a little off guard, to be honest with you, right, of saying, you know, I think we thought that there's the good working relationship already, and we're already doing some things, staff meetings, and you're well aware of what's going on and have been instrumental in helping bridge the gap between us and DPW, because a lot of our stuff can't be done without DPW, right? And, you know, it's there, we know it, it's working, so it just seemed like all of a sudden, hey, we're gonna change this other element in the back end, and kind of going, oh, well, wait a minute, that something didn't feel right there.
Be the devil's advocate, let's say that there's a new town manager and the act doesn't pass. And she goes to the town manager, says, look, I got a problem. He goes, not my problem. Get out of my office. This way it's defined. It is the town manager's problem to work in conjunction with, and it will state it right in the language. And again, the town manager's got to go for an evaluation. Town manager doesn't comply with what's in the act. The board of selectmen then says that's what his performance would be based on. So it kind of solidifies what's already there, I guess, the way I'm saying.
So in other words, to state it somewhat differently, we were lucky with Derek and we're lucky with Joe.
Well, we don't know either. Yeah,
Right?
yes,
Saying,
yes.
up, at least up to this point, and I'm, you know,
But
I think we've seen his colors, and I don't think his colors change that quick, so, yeah.
But it's the you never know, you know, it's, you know, I look at Redcom and honestly, it's a tough position to be in as a Redcom elected official, because there's a lot to it. And I don't think most people appreciate it, to be honest. I think they just, oh, my kids go play at the park, have a good time. They don't understand all the ramifications and what goes into developing it and so forth. It's, you know, people show up and there's a concert at the beach and they sit there and they drink and they think it's great, but they don't know what was put into
The
development.
tape behind the tape.
Right, so, yeah.
I think he can be an advocate for you too. I think that's a benefit to him knowing and understanding what's going on. If somebody comes through the door and starts questioning him and you've already provided him with the information, and it's say, well, I'll have to talk to the rec commission when he's already in the loop, maybe not making any decisions, but already in the loop to know what's going on.
Okay, Matt, you're here. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary.
Do you mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's been said in some ways, in a few different places, but I would love, if it's possible, to have the exact, sort of what you were saying, the exact responsibilities, or even a Venn diagram version of what it sounds like, you know, HR and interdepartmental communication is directly under town manager. You know, the overlap might be goals that, you know, direct supervisor would be Retcom for these responsibilities exactly. And I think for all the reasons you all are saying, if there is another town manager, Joe's intentions might be that everything is basically exactly the way it is right now, because we do have this working relationship and we're formalizing it based on our relationship with a new town manager without being very specific about what is the restrictions of what would be under town manager. I would worry that their intentions may change and they may look to move more under town manager than the initial ask or intention was.
Yeah.
And Retcom is,
Or less.
or less, but Retcom is one of the biggest support systems for me as a one-person department. So having less responsibility may result in eventually less support if the board loses some of its core day-to-day involvement.
Yeah.
That really has been a major benefit. And so I think if more moved under the town manager, it could actually hurt the department unintentionally. I don't think Joe has any intention of that, but like we're saying, we're trying to plan for a potential future person that may have different intentions. So I think being as specific as possible would just really help clarify exactly what all of our intentions are today.
Okay, anyone else? Matt, you're here. I'm sorry to see you're the only one from the library, but.
Well, Debbie is our.
Oh, yes, I apologize, yeah, but she started by saying I'm here for.
Well,
Right,
because
so-
a lot of the trustees didn't really talk about this. They don't even know this is going on really. They will find out about it in an email from me tomorrow, and we'll talk about it Monday, but they don't know about it. So that's why I don't want to represent the trustees when I can't say for sure what they would say. So that's why I'm not leaving you
Yeah.
in the lurch.
No,
But
I'm gonna say exactly the same thing as, the library board of trustees has not discussed anything related to the town manager act. And we do have it on our agenda for our meeting Monday. So anything I might say tonight does not express in any way the opinion of the library trustees, because they haven't even discussed. Yeah, I guess from the discussion tonight, I guess I would like the library trustees to see the exact language that is being discussed. I was not able to find that available to the public anywhere. I realize it's a working document, it's probably changing every meeting,
It is.
but until I can see the actual wording. I mean, everyone's intention sounds great, but what matters is what gets put in writing. And we talked about, in 5 years, we might have a different, and I would echo what Maria said is, I would also be concerned that a new town manager may come in, read what's in the Town Manager Act, and have a wildly different interpretation of what their role is. So I'd like that very well spelled out. The only thing that I heard mentioned tonight that I would feel at all uncomfortable with is I don't feel, and again, this is just my personal opinion, haven't talked to library trustees, I don't feel like the town manager should have a role in evaluating the library director. I think that should be firmly the responsibility of the library trustees. And I'm not sure what additional value to the process the town manager would contribute.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we've already explained, the evaluation process would lie with the trustees as it does with the recreation commissioners. He would only look at it as part of the process for personnel. It would more than likely be more with the HR director than it would be with the town manager. But it's not the intent to have somebody's performance evaluated, but that's what the elected officials are for.
Okay,
So that will not be part of it.
that comes back to what the actual wording is, because when you start using language like in collaboration with, that can be interpreted very differently by different people.
Yeah, I was just looking up where we are in the documentation with all the yellow highlights.
Yeah.
And it's full of them and it's pretty exact. I mean, but the present says, with the exception of the board, all other elected boards, officials, commission, trustees, and committees are exempt from the provisions of this act. And it's written down here in bold letters, rewrite, which means this group, we would redefine it. And you guys have input too, but it's our intent that we're not going to strip authority from anybody. We just want to build cohesion. We want to have compatibility. No offense. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's important, I think, that every employee evaluation have the same basic items.
So the format is specified by the policy, the personnel manual. And I've looked at that, and that actually has a whole section in there about the role of the town manager. And it seems to call out a lot of the things you seem to be proposing may already be specified in the personnel and procedures manual.
So that's, so in essence, nothing would be really changing.
Which
I think his
Which
job,
is Debbie's question, if nothing's changing, why are you making changes?
because the people involved in positions today may not be here in 5 years.
Right, so
And
if everything was worded as these are additional responsibilities we're requiring of the town manager, I think that's fine. When I start hearing suggestions like collaborating or sharing authority, that's where I think the trustees could be a little concerned.
Yeah, no one is, I don't think anyone
Just
suggested
said
that.
that.
Right. Well, the only thing I saw in writing was we are proposing that the department report to the town manager. And that's the wording that
Could have been sought.
raised my eyebrows.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in our infancy here.
Okay.
I mean, we've got, like I said, 20 some odd pages of addendums and corrections, and every week we go through them, every meeting, and it's, thank you, because he's great at recording information, but there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it.
The Town Manager Act as it exists now is not gonna look the same, because there is so much replication of comments and regulations that it's done this to it. There are languages that we have to look at. What's the difference between removal and terminate? Those are the things that we have to come up. What's a town official? What does that really mean? So when it's in the language, it's consistent and it doesn't, there is a contradiction. The old Town Manager Act has contradiction. Shame on the guy that wrote it, but it has contradiction in it. So we're trying to clarify that so the document is clean. And again, we're doing it for the future, not for today.
Can you, I'm just curious, how did this come up in your meetings? Did somebody say, hey, we think that these folks should
So,
report
yeah,
to?
I read the Town Manager Act. It's difficult to read. No
Yes, it is.
No, hey,
It's
everything first time.
a legal document, so.
And
12 years.
what occurred to me is if the town were a business, would you run a business where 3/4 of the employees report to the CEO and 1/4 of the employees report to
Somebody,
somebody else? And it just doesn't make, it didn't make sense to me. And so other members of the committee weighed in. We interviewed the selectmen individually and asked them that specific question. And the feedback that we got from the selectmen was that it makes sense to them to have every town employee report to the same person, the town manager. Now, clearly there are issues that have to be discussed and resolved before that can happen. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But it just didn't seem to make sense. Now, you can look at town manager acts from other towns that have town managers. Some of them written so that they are like that, so that all the employees report to the town manager, some are not. So there's no clear cut best way to do this. So lacking that, we have to decide for ourselves what makes sense for the town of Upton, regardless of what other towns do. Because just because some other town does something some one way doesn't mean it's the best for this town.
So this came up just from reading the document,
Yeah.
not from, hey, this person,
No,
something
no,
happened,
no,
or
no.
something didn't happen.
No,
No, that's what we were afraid people would say.
Right,
No.
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
and-
How did you come to this?
And
This is-
it started with this committee. It didn't start with our town manager.
Right.
And we have done research. Example, we look at the town that's growing, so we have to visualize what the growth is gonna be. The town of Shrewsbury, for example, every employee is reporting through the town manager. They have other elected boards. Library is a good example. The only one in the library that there is one position in library that doesn't, and it's not the director. It doesn't make sense. But they are structured that way. Other towns are going that direction to improve the communication. That's 90% of the issue. He has a staff meeting, everybody's on that same page. There isn't my department. Look, I'll throw it on the table. I go back to the days when it was my territory, your territory, and everybody fought and things weren't getting done. Now the town's a lot better. Things are getting done. It's not your house, it's the town's house. It's not your tractor, it's the town's tractor. We're starting to get that mentality, and I think it's great. So if it came, I think it probably came up in the discussion that we had one night relative to the town clerk was once an elected position, now reports to town manager, and the efficiencies of that. Same way with treasurer collector, the efficiencies that have created, because now there's that integral communication between all those departments, and it's improved the entire process. We had, and I can say it, because if they were in the room, I'd say, we had the treasurer collector that wouldn't talk to the town clerk. That was ridiculous, but how did we solve it? They were elected. Now, how do you deal with it? So we're trying to build that communication and cooperative spirit.
You asked why we don't have duties and responsibilities. Back in the 1st of March, we sent out questionnaires to every board. And this is the first night we've had people come in from boards to speak to us. So
Questionnaire that had like specific questions on it?
no, request to come to our meeting and meet with us.
Okay.
So, and you're the first ones to come in here. So
Well, I think just for me, and I'm speaking just for me, I remember getting that email and thinking, well, does this involve me? Does this involve my board? Does this involve, like, how would this, I only found out later how this was actually going to affect the library at Rec-Com. And that's when I was like, all right, wait a minute, my ears started perking up and I needed to pay attention. But that first email, I thought, well, if this doesn't really involve me, I'm not sure I have an opinion. It's hard to read the act, so I'm just gonna let it go. But
we didn't want
we did
to,
get involved.
we didn't want to delineate anything until such time that we had the input of everybody and then forward from there.
Sure.
It wasn't like we were gonna write something up and say, hey, here's how it's gonna be. So
Did the trustees get that email? That first
Yeah, I got
email?
it right here. It was
I
sent,
can't tell you who I got it from. like, whether it's
Catherine
library.
Robertson, Rick Porter was on it, Debbie Morelli was on it. Yeah,
They're not
and,
joint library trustees, though.
What?
They're not library trustees.
but you are.
I am,
Yeah,
yes.
you were on.
But what I saw was an email that looked like it was just Rick and me, so I'm thinking, well, this must affect Rec-Com.
Well, I'll read it. It says, as you are probably aware, the town requires a review of the Town Manager Act every 5 years. Our purpose is to review the act and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen as to proposed changes. As a member of the committee, I am reaching out to you as well as other boards to see if you have any comments and if you see the need to represent your board by attending one of our meetings. Please let me know if there's any interest and I will place you on our agenda. We meet every Wednesday, et cetera. And at that point, we hadn't come to any, we just wanted input. That's all we were looking for, that back then.
I don't recall the trustees getting that, but
The trustees did not, you got it personally, the board as a whole did not get it.
And we sent it to the chairs. So figuring the chair, rather than send every trustee the email, it went to the chair of each department, i.e. Rick.
Right.
You know, so
I don't think the email, okay, I guess the email didn't say that, or else we would have discussed it in a meeting.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that this was,
What-
dear chairs, this is what's going on.
So no, we didn't
Right.
say that because
Right,
we didn't want to say that. What we wanted to do was say, you are a town, you as a board, do you have any input into what changes should be made to the act? If any. So we weren't, we didn't write that email saying, we're planning to do this. Do you have any, we didn't do that. We said, we're reviewing the act because we're required to. Board may be affected. Contact the boards and say, do you have any,
Yeah.
is there anything that you see that you would like to change? So we didn't decide to make a change and then send the email. At the beginning of the process, we sent the email to all the boards and say, what changes do you think should be made? And
One
that's
of the
how it
trustees came to me with it. I don't.
It wasn't sent to
understand.
any trustees.
it wasn't sent to the trustees, it was only sent to the chairs of the board.
And I followed up a week later saying, I'm reaching out to you, let you know that in discussion at a recent meeting, there was discussion, I repeated myself, to all full-time employees reporting to the town manager with final authority resting with elected boards. Let me know if you wish to give inputs. So we've been communicating. I just,
Yeah,
and I'm not
that's-
trying to be cute.
And that's the one that we jumped on.
Thought it was an email to recreation. That's how I interpreted it. So I guess it's a misinterpretation.
Well, yeah, it's, and Dick, why don't you state, well, you just,
Yeah, we have no timeline on this. This doesn't have to be done in the next month or 2 months. It has to be done in a time period. We see maybe the fall before there'll be any vote. So don't go running out thinking that this is gonna be done next week or next month.
It's not on the warrant, that was just.
It's not on the warrant, So we have time to do this. That's the plan, is to get the input and get it right.
I'm not saying you did it on purpose. I'm
No.
just trying to figure out, like, when I got that email, I thought it was RecCom. I had no idea it was as chair of the trustees. And so that's a confusion that serving on two boards,
Yeah,
it happened, but
could have been more
obviously I misinterpreted.
So we do have Town Manager Act Review Committee input on the agenda for our Monday Library Board of Trustees meeting. Is there anything specific that would help you that we could discuss on Monday? Is there any draft language we could look at? Anything we
So-
could provide?
So you have a sense now, based on Joe's description of how it would work with RecCom. If you applied that to the library, could the library trustees come up with like Mona suggested, share, a Venn diagram or some way of representing, here's what you do, you're responsible for, here's the piece that Joe's responsible for, here's how they overlap. I think that's the suggestion that Dick made, and that's a very important piece. And if we had that for all the elected boards that have employees, it would make it a lot easier to have this discussion, you know what I mean?
Right, it's
So
all.
if that's something that you think the trustees can come up with, rather than us trying to come up, because we don't know everything that they know clearly. So I think it really is to the RecCom and to the library trustees and Board of Health, for those boards to say, here's how we see this new relationship. We would put it on paper, this is what it would look like. And then, we can go over that and we can put it into the proposed revisions if we think it's appropriate. And that's the best
Okay.
outcome.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And I know the library trustees have some pretty good structure in place. We have bylaws of the library trustees that specify some of those duties and responsibilities. We have support from the MBLC that, that's the state agency that oversees libraries. They lay out, this is what trustees should do, this is what the director should do, this is what HR should do. So we can definitely discuss and come up with some.
I think Steve said it best. We're trying to open the door. And Rick said it also. We don't have a time. It's not like we have to do, if we take till September, it's still September.
Yeah, that's helpful too, because I did notice an agenda that said, vote on, final something and
No,
So
there's a
it's
couple
good.
of issues in here, but that
Yeah.
was more internal for us, but yeah.
no, that's good to hear that we're not.
And the other
Getting
thing
it
you have
started
to
a month.
also just understand is, this committee only makes recommendations. We're not the final.
And it has to.
We make
go
a
to the
recommendation
selectmen.
that the selectmen then have to vote on, and they, I was on this committee 5 years ago doing the same thing. Glutton for punishment. And so the recommendations that we made 5 years ago, 3/4 of them, the selectmen at that time chose not to implement. So
And
they make the final decision that then goes to the town meeting for voting.
and then goes to the legislature.
And then it has to
The
go.
legislature has to approve it for its legality.
But doesn't the board of, if it is passed
At town meeting.
town meeting,
Goes to
doesn't the board of selectmen have to follow it? And the
No,
town manager?
it goes to legislature and the legislature
Right.
will say, you can do this, no, you can't do that.
But if it's approved, then the board of selectmen has to follow it.
Yes.
Yes.
They can't just say, well, we're just gonna.
Yeah, oh, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a lengthy process. And knowing the state, 6 months is a short period of time before they review things. So, did you want to say
I was just gonna mention, Debbie, you might want to send the link to this meeting to the trustees before Monday night.
Yeah.
When will it be posted?
Tomorrow, maybe?
On the town's website?
On the town's YouTube channel.
Oh, the YouTube channel. Okay,
It might be helpful before they get into
I'll
the.
find it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this would break protocol, but I was wondering if it's possible, I'll just speak for myself, I don't know if you agree, but for the directors to also be in getting some of these updates. I know they were sent to the chairs, but I know, again, as someone who would be directly affected by any sort of changes, just kind of knowing as the updates, the updated wording, anything that would be sent to the committees, if it could be sent to us, just so that we're in the loop and can really work directly with them. And they have full-time jobs and busy lives, so if anything gets missed, it's just more people to make sure that we're all being able to discuss it and participate.
we're required by law to disseminate minutes and so forth. Unfortunately, the dialogue that takes place, we could spend a half an hour talking about one phrase. And again, I'll use, is it terminate or remove?
Okay.
And we debate that. So that gets redundant. The big picture is we are a distance off from making any major decisions.
Mhm.
Because we're still working on a lot. I mean, it is comprehensive, especially where my friend here has helped correct the mistakes that the guy that wrote it did. So,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to it. We're not rushing it down anybody's throat. And I've said it 1,000 times, we're trying to build a cooperation within town government, not, this is my empire, this is my, no, those days are gone. People should be working together. And a good example is the chief of police is public safety officer now. And we always had police here and fire there. Now they work together as a team. Benefits the citizens, big time.
Everything's draft too. Just keep that in mind. So
Yeah.
you don't take this, someone said, hey, this is what they're gonna do. That's, everything that comes out is a draft and a proposal. When the final one gets, everybody will get a copy of it.
So I think to your point, if, let's say you come up with a Venn diagram, which I think would be awesome. You could come to one of our meetings where we put that on the agenda for discussion. We could discuss it, ask you questions, and so that you would walk away with a better understanding and we would have a better understanding. So that we can do. What we can't do is we can't share drafts because unless we vote on something, we can't really legally share
Yeah.
it. So, but you can certainly come to a meeting.
Yeah.
And we could have a conversation like we're doing now. That's perfectly okay.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and I think probably at our next meeting, we might, come up with something, and that, I guess I'm more referring to the calls for information that you all were sending out, things like that. I think as the actual staff, I won't speak for you, as the actual staff member, I could have also maybe had some responses that would be the same or different. I again, trying to take myself out of my current situation. If I did have a real serious situation where I didn't feel supported by my board and I wanted drastic change, you could have maybe been receiving very different information from me than from my chairs. So just
Again, they
again,
have the authority though. So.
yeah, but
But
again,
I
trying to
hear
think
you.
about different humans in different roles.
Another, to reinforce, again, this was our decision. Joe was brought into it. He was asked for input. He came into our meeting and presented it. After that meeting, Joe was not present in any of our meetings, and he probably won't be unless we call him back in again, because we don't want any slant of bias to this. We want this to be totally open.
So in other words, if you ask me like, what's going on? I don't know.
That's what he said when I went in his office and said, what's going on?
He really is, because, I mean, he is the employee that is being evaluated, his description, job description being rewritten. And, he shouldn't be voting and putting on it unless we ask.
And in the end, this is the town's governmental structure. And the hard thing is to take out personalities and people and to look at, from an organizational standpoint, what is in the best interest of the town. Because you need to sort of take the personalities out. And for me, I don't want anyone to think that I have any influence on this because then it's introducing the person into it,
Correct.
when this is really just governmental structure.
Coming from us. Yeah.
I think I'd start operations on one side and personnel issues on another and try and work off that. I'm just trying to think about what you're saying, Lauren, but I think that would be daily operations on this side and then the other issues, the personnel issues. You know, that's something in that manner.
Well, and that's why in the mail, I kind of mixed up a couple of things and I didn't group, I purposely didn't group them together. I mixed them just to see if, you know, if there's a line of thought that comes out. So anyway,
Well,
we can,
We can do that.
we'll take that offline as well, now that we have a better sense. We can talk about it in our next meeting on the 20th as well, so.
and this is what we encourage. If you want to attend our meetings, they're open. You know, anyone's encouraged to come. And not that we're gonna allow dialogue going across the table, so we've got a lot of work to do, but you could listen. And if we have input or need input, we could ask.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
best, good, okay. Gentlemen, I'd ask, what do you think we should do? We're missing 2 members. Do we want to defer to our next meeting? It doesn't make much point to
I
sit
agree.
here and have, 40% of the membership not here.
Move adjourned.
Okay,
Do we have a date for our next meeting?
okay, I'll throw that out for, I'm open, next Wednesday.
Wednesday is the 10th. And then the 17th, 24th is candidates night,
So,
so we can't meet on candidates. So we could meet on the 10th and the 17th.
So I'm gonna be gone from the 20th to the 15th of May. Just keep that in mind. I think town meetings when the,
7.
so, that'll be good.
So no, the election's 7, town meeting's
Town meeting is on the
Town meeting's the second.
2nd.
7. Not a heat now. Oh,
You know, I do not like it when people sit behind me, so.
I'm not trying to.
Okay.
well, I don't think so, gentlemen, just for the interim, we will meet next Wednesday. And Matt, the trustees will have met. So
Yes.
I know that short window, your Monday, we're Wednesday, but anything that we could have, would it help us? If not, we can wait. I mean, we don't have, we've got a lot in here besides just this one issue that people have concerns about. There are so many what ifs. So, okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we get the second? We are now adjourned at the 7:04. Thank you. And thanks for coming in tonight, everyone.